Welcome, everyone, to this session. Today, we're so happy to talk with Realigns member Kostas Latoufis, co-founder of School of the Earth in Greece, an electrical engineer, and a board member of the Wind Empowerment Network. Kostas has been working on making renewable energy, such as wind power, more accessible for displaced people and people living off-grid. Kostas, hello and welcome, and thank you so much for joining.
Hello, James. Thank you for the invitation and for the great project that we have run.
I can't wait to hear more about it, and I'm sure everybody would love to hear a lot more about it too. So thank you so much for being here and sharing. First of all, could you give us a bit of an introduction to you and your work and School of the Earth as well?
I'm an electrical engineer. I've been working in off-grid renewable energy systems for the last 15 years, mostly in collaboration with the Technical University in Athens. And most of my time there, I've spent working on rural electrification in developing countries, and particularly with locally manufactured small wind turbines, which we will talk more about. So this has been my main focus of research, but also it has been my main work in terms of activism through empowerment, but also through the School of the Earth here in Greece, where apart from the work that we do on permaculture and general self-sufficiency, homesteading at farm scale or household scale, my main focus there is renewable energy projects. And again, locally manufactured wind turbines, where we organize courses for people to learn how to do this, how to build these turbines, or we organize installations in farms in Greece and also abroad in Africa and in other places.
It sounds like fantastic work. And can I ask why wind? Like, what gap is wind power addressing? Why do you give so much focus to wind?
Yeah, when in the period between 2000 and 2010, particularly small wind was growing fast. It looked like as if it was going to become big. And the main reason was the fact that you could produce quite a lot of energy compared in a windy place compared to a solar panel, and it was much cheaper at the time. So solar panels were quite expensive in the past. So that, in addition with the local manufacturing aspect and the ecosystem that we try to build locally through this approach with wind empowerment network works and so on and so forth, then it was a very interesting combination that really empowered local communities in many different ways. After 2011, 2012, solar panels became very, very cheap, and that's still the case, and they're constantly becoming cheaper. So that really pushed a lot small wind out of the mainstream, at least, picture. So now small wind makes a lot of sense in really windy places where off-grid electrification, rural electrification is needed. Big examples of that are, for example, Patagonia in Argentina, the Horn of Africa, for example, and then other places. Yeah, but the local manufacturing aspect is still very strong. So now through local manufactured small wind, we focus a lot on education, on empowerment, on enhancing local economic activity, and obviously supporting at this stage off-grid renewable energy systems that are hybrid between solar and wind. But in a windy place, that will reduce, let's say, the size of your battery bank. It will probably lengthen its life. So at this point, it's like technically in terms of the system, it provides auxiliary services.
And you mentioned locally manufactured being a focus of your work, like locally manufactured wind. Can you tell us a bit about why? Because I imagine you mentioned solar panels becoming cheaper. Is that often at the expense of maybe quite poor workers' rights and practices elsewhere? So why does locally manufactured make a difference?
Well, a commodity, a product becoming cheaper in the world, in the global market, is part of the same story that probably a lot of us know. Offsetting a lot of the costs to the environment, where it's being, where resources are extracted or products manufactured, pushing down workers' wages and so on and so forth. So it's part of the same story, and these are the main reasons behind that. On the other hand, manufacturing manufacturing locally solar panels, it's not possible. It's like it's a high tech application. Potentially regionally, it can be done in some cases, but it's not something you can do at the rural region, for example. The approach that we take within wind empowerment, where we mostly focus on locally manufactured wind turbines, is to be able to build small wind turbines that are the size, let's say, a rural community would need with basic tools and materials and skills. So it's mostly carpentry. It's working with wood, working with metal, and using raw materials that are more or less found everywhere. So through this approach, you can open up the opportunity for these turbines to be manufactured and maintained locally, obviously with the support of international networks such as Women Empowerment. So there is this like global, local collaboration, and yeah, there's interesting dynamic. So yeah, another reason that one would focus on the local manufacturing of a small wind turbine is that in the context of generating income, for example, through mobile phone charging, so providing that kind of service. You could probably be able to do it at a lower cost than a solar system, if obviously located in a windy location.
So you mentioned that small wind turbines can be built, in a way that is relatively easy without the kind of industrial infrastructure that solar panels might need. What other benefits of why focus on wind in a displacement context, for example? What other benefits could wind power offer?
Yeah, for example, in a displacement setting, okay, the educational and the empowerment aspect would be the stronger compared to a solar system. Okay, if the location is quite windy, then we could also lower costs a lot. So, for example, the wind turbines that we've been trying to develop through the Wind Mobile project are low-cost turbines that can be built locally, and in a windy location, they can produce quite a lot of electricity. Yeah, so I think in such a setting, it would end up providing cheaper electricity because of the local manufacturing and maintenance and the simplicity of the system's design. Because apart from the wind turbine, then there is a whole system with electronics and batteries and so on and so forth. So we try to simplify that so that users don't depend on imports of electronics or other parts of the system.
What are the main challenges that you've come up with when doing this? For example, in off-grid communities or displacement context, is there any kind of barriers that you've noted?
Yeah, of course, it's a challenging process, and also you cannot really replicate a solution always. So it depends a lot on the context. So there is an aspect of designing the process again every time to an extent. Main challenges have to do with transferring, let's say, knowledge. So how can this be done more effectively? How can it be done more collaboratively with the local community and so on and so forth. Yeah, and then there is like you have to overcome culture barriers or language barriers. Obviously these things, they are very, very interesting and inspiring to work with. Usually the main challenge is that it takes longer, but it's always worth it because there is this human element that is very, very rich when you take this path. But then that also involves another interesting aspect is that it involves a lot of collaboration between organizations, between people, and that in itself can be a challenge or a great opportunity, as you know. So it's a very, let's say, interesting process because it moves a lot away from just a technical view or approach, and it includes this social aspect that is it's valuable for all, actually, not just the locals, but also those going there. And nowadays, through the ease of communication, through the internet and all these tools and so on and so forth, it's very it's easier to build networks that span continents and can actually be productive on the ground. We've seen that through women empowerment, but also, Realigns does similar work. It's very nice to be able to build these bridges.
And like you say, sometimes working in a collaborative way like this can maybe take more time or add in some extra dimensions, but it creates space for so much learning and emergence, and things happen that maybe are almost unexpected in those relationships, right? Working in that way can be so empowering. So it's fantastic to hear. You mentioned that often the process of this kind of co-design of small wind energy can sometimes you almost have to start from scratch because the context can be quite different. But do you notice any patterns? Like, say, for example, if people want to take up this process, where would they begin and what could that pattern look like?
Yeah, so maybe I could describe some of the collaborations that were developed through this through the Renewable project as an example. In one of the cases, we made contact with some let's say maker spaces. This was like the main thing in Africa, and one of them was in the Rhino camp in South Sudan, and the other was there was a maker space in Kenya, and also it was a network of maker spaces across Africa. And so there was some input from that. So there were three, let's say, different cases, but they all wanted to engage with this small wind turbine project. They would apply it in different way in their local context. So initially, we would have some online meetings and some group or personal chats where we try to see, what kind of tools are available, what kind of materials are available that we generally know that we would need through the design and manufacturing process. So there are lists of materials and tools that usually come up in when you make these turbines. So that's from past experience. Then, we would get feedback on we don't have any welders that work with metal, for example, or we have a lot of experience working with wood, or both, or we can find these materials. Others we cannot. So that's starting from a general case, and then trying to make it more specific depending on the local context. For example, there is a women empowerment organization in Cote d'Ivoire, in the Ivory Coast, and they build a lot of turbines without using any metal. So they just use wooden structure and so on and so forth. So then, if the case that you're working with, you feel that connects with work that somebody else has done that we know of, then we try to either connect the groups or try to get information from one side and move it to the other and try to build new design. From other projects we have done in Africa, for example, the main issue with replicating the whole process was getting the magnets, for example, because we need some magnets for building the generator. And these usually they would have to be imported at high costs. It seemed to be a problem. It was a problem for most cases. So in this case, we tried to overcome this by trying to find the magnets locally. So there were some types of magnets that were reoccurring in all the contexts, like speaker magnets from loudspeakers, the ring ferrite magnets. So we saw that this is it's quite it's a recycled or an upcycled resource that can be found almost anywhere, at least in the African continent context. And most of the groups that we had contact with, they would be able to find this material. So we started designing turbines around that. It was the first time that we had done it, but we saw that this could be an opportunity to overcome this bottleneck. And for example, looking through some forums of small wind turbine manufacturers, we found some people that had done this work before, so we took some knowledge from there and we built it up. So that describes a little bit the process in general.
It's amazing to hear how adaptable it is in terms of, you were mentioning how you're using a new source of materials. You're mentioning how some people use only wood and less or no metal. So how adaptable these wind turbines are in terms of the materials, but also how you adapt the process and how you adapt it to the context and the people who you're working with. And I think that's really fantastic to hear.
Yeah, this is one of the this is part of the richness of this approach. Actually, wooden turbines wouldn't be able to build all the sizes of that, but still, in some cases, it would be a feasible solution.
Excellent. Are there examples of when you've been working with these great maker spaces? Can you think of some times when you've seen impacts in or heard stories of impacts in the communities where the wind turbines have been? What changes does it make to have these skills in the community and access to energy like this?
Yeah, I mean, in most cases, the wind turbine will be installed as part of a system, of a hybrid system with solar panels, and that system will provide electricity for specific uses. So it might be a local health clinic, it might be refrigeration of agricultural and pastoral products, it might be mobile phone charging and lights. So usually there is this direct impact on the actual use because there was a very defined need in the past. So usually, obviously, we hear about that. Then the other things are more long term. So other projects being inspired by that action and help, it's more long term, or how the skills are diffused in the community. That's also more long term and a bit harder to follow. But yeah, usually it's the actual reason that the system was installed that's the main impact.
I can imagine that making such a difference I mean, you mentioned some industries and in terms of refrigerating food, like you said, or charging mobile phones, or like so many uses where this could make a real difference, especially in a displacement context or other off-grid spaces. And I'm wondering about our members who are probably listening to this, listening to you speak and wondering about their own communities and what skills are available there and what skills people are ready to share. You mentioned some quite necessary skills for undertaking something like this, such as woodworking, metalworking. If people are thinking, wow, I want to do this in my own community, what other skills do you think are needed before people get going?
In terms of manufacturing the actual wind turbine, these are the basic skills, and the basic tools that are needed have to do with carpentry and metalwork. But also the level of skill does not need to be very very high. You don't need to be a professional carpenter to make a wind turbine blade. And in all the courses that we do anywhere in the world, usually the people that join potentially never worked with wood before. After 3 or 4 days, they make a perfect blade. It's the the manufacturing process is very open in that sense. Apart from the wind turbine, then there is the renewable energy system. So that requires a bit of, let's say, knowledge on how to install, how to maintain, and so on and so forth. To an extent, it can be transferred during the courses. But if there is a group or a local company or anyway, if there is this knowledge within the ecosystem of the community, then that's definitely a positive. If that doesn't exist, we do a lot of troubleshooting and have a lot of communication with the users and say, does this blink? What's the sound of that? And this kind of thing. And we try to troubleshoot this way. But I think the most important aspect is to have obviously real needs that need to be met, and have some kind of community organization around that. All the technical issues, they can be solved sooner or later. But a strong and committed community to the project in general is what will take everything. Is what will make everything successful in the long term. So I would mostly focus on that in the end.
That's really great to hear. And yeah, like the examples you've shared of kind of troubleshooting that maybe kind of skills gap or materials gaps. It's great to hear that it's possible, but what's needed is that the passion and the community and the support and a need. So that's fantastic. I'm wondering about your vision, Kostas, of how you'd like to see this work. Maybe not scaled, because I know scale is a kind of challenging subject in kind of permaculture and regenerative movements, but kind of how would you like to see this work ripple out? What's your vision for the future?
Yeah, a lot of our work in wind empowerment and the School of the Earth and with locally manufactured small wind, it has been used as an example in a lot of people, social scientists and so on that work with cosmolocalism. So it's how global and local become interconnected and how knowledge commons can be set through through the internet and then manufactured locally and so on and so forth. But one of the things that they discuss is how these initiatives, they usually, when they start talking about scaling, they don't grow individual organizations, but they scale wide. So they make networks. So usually organizations, for example, like ours, the School of the Earth, we don't generally grow. We could grow a bit, that would be fine. But generally, we don't grow so much in size, but we grow a lot in connection. So how I would envision this work, for example, scaling wide, would be to collaborate with even more organizations, for example, in Africa and through the African Makerspace Network and through the Alliance and other networks, and trying to diffuse this knowledge so that it can be, like seeds. It can be planted in many different locations. So it's I think that's how would be a great future for this, and obviously this kind of work to have a very dense networks with information and people and skills and general knowledge and wisdom being transferred easily within one.
That's a beautiful vision. Thank you so much for sharing it. I also love how you say, and especially like you were saying with School of the Earth, not growing necessarily in size, but in network and in collaboration and in connection. And I think that's a beautiful way to think of our little ecosystems and a wider, nested in a wider kind of network ecosystem. Maybe not envisioning growth as kind of a growth in size, but rather a growth in distribution and in connection and networking. I think that's a beautiful way to
Yeah, yeah, and I think this is what we all do in the end. Networks, like this is what we do.
How can people learn more? Do you have any materials on your website that you can share, or how would people start the process?
Yeah, I think that the best would be to go on the Wind Empowerment website. It's windempowerment.org. And through there, you can find a lot of organizations that do this work in many, many countries in the world, and with very different, let's say, approaches and themes. There is a lot of material on that website. And then also there are some forums like field lines. And also through Wind Empowerment, one can get in touch with a lot of people that have been working on this, like myself and others. So it's it's very easy to reach individuals that can help out. So yeah, don't be shy. Just send an email.
Kostas, this has been so fantastic to share space with you and to listen to you and hear about your fantastic work. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with those listening?
I would just say keep up the great work that you're all doing, that I'm sure you're all doing, if you're part of the Alliance and with networks and if you're listening to this. And it's much needed in our times. So yeah, keep it up.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all your wonderful work and sharing with us today. It's always a pleasure to connect with you and hope to connect again soon.
Thank you very much.